There are some rules in the movie business. One is never work with animals or children. Well, you'll hear about that later. Another is if you go on location, expect to spend at least 10 times more money and time than you'd expected. Cinesound, Australia's major studio of the time, used to go on location a lot in the 30s. It was in keeping with the documentary background of Australian film. You needed those obligatory shots of kangaroos, aboriginals, cow-cockies and their girls in whipcord breeches. Such a film was Tall Timbers. In 1937, the Cinesound crew moved to Gloucester near Newcastle to make an epic of tree-felling folk. Ken G. Hall was the director, and the script was a contribution by documentary director and cameraman Captain Frank Hurley. It wasn't a particularly profound story. Two rival timber companies need to fell a lot of trees in a hurry. One decides to hold a timber drive. You cut through a lot of trees on top of a mountain, you dynamite them, and they fell the rest in a kind of avalanche. The company moved to Stroud and settled into a local hotel. Every day they were taken to their location deep in the bush on flat railway trucks of the sort used to transport logs. Despite all that Hurley had told him about timber drives, Ken Hall was rather alarmed to find that nobody in the area around Stroud or Gloucester had ever heard of such a thing. When he announced that they were going to try and recreate one near Simsville, the whole population of Stroud and Gloucester was eager to see how it was done. One of them was Arthur Chadban.
On the Sunday, the big drive. Everybody in town was supposed to see the spectacle, something we'd never seen before, even though we'd lived in the bush our entire lives. We'd seen logs felled, sniggled, carted. We'd never seen a spectacle like this. Everybody was invited to go, and everybody was anxious.
Came the dawn. Ken Hall, with his camera crew, but no local extras, was up on the Craven Plateau when the charges went off. The result? Another flop. What did he do? Well, he did what any filmmaker would do in those circumstances. What audiences saw was an ingenious fake. Real footage of trees falling was combined with film of miniatures shot on a soundstage in Sydney. Special effects man J. Allen Kenyon saved the film. So why did Hall go on location at all? Well, that's the movies. A funny business. Perhaps not always quite so funny, however. No star lit up the Hollywood scene quite so dazzlingly as Rudolph Valentino. But when he made Son of the Sheik in 1926 with Hungarian star Vilma Banki, his appeal was waning. Valentino had contributed to his own downfall. Reputedly bisexual, he liked assertive women. He even married one, Natasha Rambova, the companion of Russian actress Alena Zimova. This didn't help his sex star status. His studio tried to bolster it by linking him with the Joan Collins of the day, Pola Negri. Pola ate stallions like Charlie Chaplin for breakfast, and her career was slipping too. She became, on paper at least, Rudolph's devoted lover. After completing Son of the Sheik, Valentino visited New York. and in a day or two, incredibly, he was dead of peritonitis. It was, cynics would have said, a great career move. The studio ran off hundreds of prints of Son of the Sheik and sent them east. On the same train was Pola Negri, determined to squeeze every ounce of publicity from the funeral. Dead, Valentino's fame endured. A woman in black tended his grave. People wrote songs about him. In the funny business of the movies, Rudy was a bigger star dead than alive. In the 70s, the Australian cinema was briefly inundated with a wave of melodramas with psychic overtones. Weekend of Shadows, Summer of Secrets, Summerfield, The Last Wave. It isn't usually thought good form to send up the Australian cinema, but Paul Leedon and David Polterak did so in a short film, a fake documentary allegedly about the making of a fictitious melodrama called Weekend of Summer Last.
Yes, it's just gone 8:05, morning time, and all around me, filming is about to commence on Australia's newest feature-length motion picture, Weekend of Summer Last. An extremely taut thriller which skillfully blends the indigenous native psychodrama with a heartwarming story of impossible love. It's an exciting pre-contemporary film set in the mid-70s, immediately prior to the late 70s. But much more than all that, it's a film written by me.
We try to look at the funnier aspects to the industry, the people who make the films and the films themselves. Dave.
Over to me. Yes, we sent up aspects like in fact, we were quite prescient. We didn't realise how ignored the writers were. We thought we were exaggerating enormously. But in fact, what we found was that the things which we thought were parodies and send-ups, in fact, were borne out when we got the chance to do our own feature.
Great. Just great. No people, no party, no ending, no picture. Todd, we need a new ending and we need it now.
Can I help?
No, thanks, Curtis. This is a script problem.
I know. We'll do a big pullback. Up and up, through the roof, into a helicopter shot, higher and higher, right up into the stratosphere. Yeah, I love it. What does it mean?
It means $20,000. Forget it.
We thought that was very funny at the time, but we've since found out that that is in fact what does happen, or what did happen to us in a particular case.
That writer was actually lucky being on the set and being able to say that.
Yes, yes. At least he did have the producer's ear.
While I consider myself a creative producer in the fullest possible sense, I have every faith in Pod's abilities as a creative, responsible artist to let him make all the important decisions on Summer Last. Accommodation, transport, catering, laundry.
Ego as a producer's stock in trade, but more useful is the ability to handle everything that the business can throw at you, funny or not. Richard Davis was executive in charge of production on Phar Lap.
The centre point, if you like, or the high point of Phar Lap was rerunning the 1930 Melbourne Cup. Now, we'd gone to immense amount of trouble to set up this big day. We were very graciously allowed access to Flemington. We'd set it all up. We had extras like you wouldn't believe. I mean, it was almost Cleopatra in Melbourne. And on the day, we had something like 7,000 to 8,000 people. And we had this enormous scene in which we had Phar Lap running the race. We had to choreograph our races, of course, because unfortunately our Phar Lap wasn't quite of the calibre of the Phar Lap of old. So we got all our jockeys up front and said, now look, we want you to finish in such and such an order. Is that a problem? And a slow smile spread across most of the jockeys' faces, and they said, no. Anyway, so we had our 7,000 or 8,000 people in the stands. We had the horses ready, and we had this very complicated tracking shot in which Tom Burlinson runs with the horse through the crowd. So off we go with the tracking shot, and right in the middle of the tracking shot, our extremely expensive camera starts to misperform. And so there was a few technical exchanges between the camera crew, which I won't repeat here, but they were basically four-letter technical expressions. And we did the shot again, and it didn't work, and we did the shot again, and it didn't work. Meanwhile, we have 7,000 people standing by. So that's one of the problems you can have. I mean, eventually we sorted it out. But the problem in that case was no more than a tiny microchip which had ceased to function in the board on the Panaflex. So one of the testing things about filmmaking at that level is you can have everything under control, you believe, and then the most unexpected thing goes wrong.
For an example, on Bourke and Wills, in the middle of the desert, there was a spot where they wanted to film the cricket match, which you see in the picture.
Get under it, Mr. Patton! Quick, quick!
And we got there, and the cricket match is scheduled for a certain day. Now, because of the budget of that film, we were able to wait, reschedule other stuff around the fact that we couldn't use the cricket pitch, because the cricket pitch was underwater in the middle of the desert.
Movie crews hate animals, but Robbery Under Arms needed a circus and a fog if the star was to escape a chain gang. Costume designer Anna Senior saw the result.
Right. Well, it was sort of a very early attack on the gorge before light was up. Caravans all the way along the gorge, and a whole cacophony of Ashton Circus animals that were penned overnight there, very quietly and everything else, and all their animal keepers and all that sort of thing. Eventually we dressed all the animals, we dressed all the people from the circus, we dressed all their children, everybody, and there was about sort of 25 Ashton people plus children, and I think about 16 various animals in all sorts of ways. So we were all up there in line, and cameras had to get ready, everyone had to get in line, the convicts had to get away, chipping away and doing all that sort of scene. But basically, by the time, there was so much logistically that had to happen that we had a wind machine and a fog machine. But I think they just sort of had it too close to wherever we were, because once the animals started to walk on their first take, they went past this extraordinary wind machine that blasted them straight up the back side, and they just literally took off. So it was, people weren't prepared for it at the end. So there were camera people climbing up the cliff, because it literally was a sort of gorge and it dropped down one side. There was nowhere to go. And the Brazilian guy, the South American guy that was with the lead elephant, and this is the killer elephant, got such a shock himself, and he had a terrible trouble trying to just hold back the elephant at the front. I think the last guy to go was the sound guy up the hill. He was worried about his table and bits and pieces, and they finally said, "Get up the hill!" as people are clutching onto rocks as the thing came through. Anyway, that was a trial. So they went back again, and the next time round, the lion didn't want to go. Just laid down and said, "I'm not going. No way." So they had to pick it up, put it back in the truck.
Strikebound was like just hard work. I mean, it was just extraordinary. We broke a lot of rules to make it, and a lot of the rules we broke was it was really stupid to do. At one stage, I had the mine roof falling on 700 feet underground.
Come on, get on it. Yeah.
One of the problems in being an actor is that you're pretty, well, you commit yourself to what you're doing. Before you start shooting, you might say, well, listen, I don't want to be involved in this. If there is anybody involved in the safety side of it that has any sort of pecuniary interest in what we're doing, and you can insist and insist and insist on this sort of thing, and people say, oh yeah, we'll fix this, we'll fix this, we'll fix this. But, you know, come to the day you start shooting, it hasn't been fixed. But once you've started performing, it's a bugger to have to start thinking about getting the safety factors fixed up while you're trying to concentrate on what you're doing in terms of your character and your work.
Pity it wasn't you, Doig.
I tell you now, the next man that breaks safety regulations gets the sack on the spot.
Right.
We did push things when we made that picture. There were some risks taken and it did lead to accidents. We did work extraordinarily long hours. One of the funniest things about it is that we worked in worse or as bad conditions as the miners that we were portraying, but for longer hours. So overall we were working in worse conditions than the people that we were portraying in a more advanced society did.
There are happy accidents as well. Gillian Armstrong's The Singer and the Dancer starred Elizabeth Crosby and Ruth Cracknell. Russell Boyd shot it.
I had a very small shooting ratio, which means I really could only do things like 3 or 4 times, and it must have been well over that. 6 times we'd try to do this very heavy dialogue scene between Ruth and Elizabeth Crosby, and each time we'd say, well, we start it in sun, hoping it'll stay in sun, and as soon as we started, then it went to cloud. So we'd say, all right, let's say we'll shoot the scene in cloud. As soon as we did that, then it went to sun. And finally, because I felt so bad for Ruth, because it was such an emotional scene, she got going in this one take, and it was just fantastic, and it went, suddenly the sun went, then the sun came out. Russell took his eye off the camera, and he's looking at me going, you know, are you crazy, still running? You know, wasting all this valuable film stock that we can't afford. And I just felt I couldn't say cut. I'd said cut to them so many times, and the performance was working so well. I mean, it was just one of those things I thought I was being foolish. Everyone else was looking at me like, you're an idiot to keep rolling. But I just felt for Ruth's sake, I couldn't stop her. And that scene is now in the film. It was one of those things that when we saw it back in rushes, we suddenly noticed that the sun and cloud was actually in sync with her dialogue. So when she was feeling down, it was grey, and as she felt a bit brighter, and I left it in the film in one shot. It was just one of those lucky flukes.
That's music. There's no sound. There's music.
Stunting isn't a funny business, no matter how it looks. Fire gel burns, and protective clothing doesn't always look good under a costume. Stuntmen like Bob Simmons are fine acrobats, but even with padding, falls are hazardous. If they weren't, Buddy Van Horn would not be doubling Clint Eastwood in Dirty Harry, nor would Carey Lofton and friends be boosted by air rams in It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. And Richard Widmark, not Bob Morgan, would have lost a leg in How the West Was Won. Luck, money and imagination stretch just so far. Luck, money, imagination. You need them all to make a movie. And when they all come together, there's something effortless about the illusion, a kind of dream. But there are times when the illusion wears a little thin and the dream becomes, well, a nightmare. Starstruck needed a stunt, a high fall. Joe Kennedy is supposed to walk between the 12th story windows of 2 buildings across a narrow street on a single cable. To do this, they got the stuntwoman Dale Aspin. Now, when stunt people do a high fall, they need something to fall into. What they prefer most of all is this, a simple cardboard box, or at least a large quantity of simple cardboard boxes. The boxes, up to 500 of them, are folded and piled up. Mattresses are placed on top. Later, a tarpaulin is roped down over the lot. The stunt people pad the danger areas, elbows, knees, and particularly the base of the spine. It was spinal padding, says Dale Aspin, that led to the disaster on Starstruck.
I broke my back on Starstruck. I had a different safety man. He didn't set my pad up right. I fell square right into the very point of my pad. I thought I'd hit the concrete. But from my training from Max Aspen, you must let the crowd know that you're okay. I said, fine, everything's okay. Well, why's my back hurt? I don't know why my back hurts, but I'm okay.
She's alive! She sings! She's fire paper this afternoon!
They raced me off to South Sydney Hospital. From South Sydney Hospital to the Royal North Shore. 7 weeks there with a broken back.
Let me tell you one of the sad stories from the fabulous days of Hollywood in the 20s. In those days, Hollywood wanted the best talent the world could provide. A fashionable novelist from England would find himself bought up and transported to Hollywood on a 5-year contract. A director who'd never worked anywhere but in his native country would suddenly find himself on a liner headed for the golden capital of the movies. Lucky, you will say. Well, perhaps. One of these lucky men was a Romanian called Marcel Desano. Like many Romanians, Desano was dark, moody and attractive. He'd made some movies in his home country and word got around that he had talent. Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, the most glittering of the studios, made him an offer. Come to Hollywood and direct for us. Who could refuse? Desano took up residence in the director's block at MGM's Culver City Studios. When MGM made a publicity short in 1925, he dutifully lined up with the great men working there at the time. Joseph von Sternberg, Erich von Stroheim, Victor Sjöström. The same year, Louis B. Mayer had also imported from Sweden the young Greta Garbo. And one of MGM's biggest stars at the time was Lon Chaney, the master of makeup, the man of 1,000 faces. Chaney had won his reputation with a series of grotesque roles involving agonizing feats of disguise. The apex of his career was the Phantom of the Opera. Why not, thought some genius in the front office, put Garbo and Chaney together, Beauty and the Beast, under the direction of the brilliant young Romanian. The film was to be called The Ordeal. Garbo and Chaney were formally introduced to one another on the set for the benefit of the publicity cameras. A cast and crew were chosen. Desano just had to step onto the set and say, action. He never did say action. The days went by and still nothing had been shot. The MGM producer went down to the lot and asked him very politely what was the problem. Desano said that he'd thought about it and, well, really wasn't the idea of a film with Garbo and Chaney a bit, well, silly? MGM didn't think it was silly at all. They picked up his contract and he was booted off the lot. Warner Brothers gave him a job. They were eager to put him to work. They gave him a film. He went on the lot, he went on the set, and after 10 days, still nothing had been shot. The producer went down and asked what was the problem. Desano confessed at last. He was terrified. The thought of embarking on a major Hollywood film filled him with terror. He worked hardly at all thereafter. At the endless parties around Hollywood, he became just another face, one solemn expression in a sea of grins. He married the French actress Arlette Marchal. In 1939, in Paris, he committed suicide, a casualty of Hollywood which, despite the ecstatic claims of the fans, is an industry much like any other. All of which is by way of saying you can't depend on anything in the movie business.
Nobody knows anything.
Next week, John Baxter asks the question, what makes a star? And shows the 6-year-old Shirley Temple next Tuesday at 10:05 in Filmstruck. Stay with ABC Now as Steve Bisley and Sue Jones star in Many Are Called, a very realistic drama in Studio 86.
On Thursday nights at 8:30.
You want to take a good, solid look at your priorities, son?
The Fast Lane.
A little idea, fresh approach.
The story of a country vet.
It's ephemeral. That's a complete ephemeral, Bryce.
A country doctor. And a bunch of country people.
Don't the boys look good together?
A daring innovation in Australian television, beating back the very frontiers of possibility.
Tons of research, new jingle, big name presenter, rhythm, colour. Oh, we're gonna kill them.
The Fast Lane.
The gum you can chew and chew and chew and chew and chew.
8:30 Thursday on ABC.
I don't believe it.